Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of SuperCoach, mates. Well, round 12 is done and dusted. Um, History says we've already got one grand finalist. It's now just a question of who the second grand finalist will be. But I guess for us in SuperCoach land, this is a bit of a tricky time with the buys and whatnot. So what we're going to do is we're perhaps going to lead you on some tips and tricks for surviving the buy periods. And we're going to do our normal weekly review of our team. So as per normal, I am joined by Thomas. How are you recovering after a very, very disappointing St Kilda performance on Thursday night last week?
Yeah, obviously I went to that shit show. It was, not great that we didn't score a goal until half time. And, thought it was going to be a 100-point blowout. But credit where credit's due, I guess it was good to see them bounce back somewhat and not let it completely blow out of proportions. But, hopefully a strong bounce back is greatly needed against Sydney, that's for sure. But in the SuperCoach world, I think, it was a tale of two halves, really, with regards to my own side and the SCMates side. I guess the SCMates side, I'll touch on it when we go into the weekly recap. It's gone strength to strength, and I guess that's been partially because we've avoided all the injuries and the car crashes that have come along with that. And inside the top 1K for the SCMates community side, so hopefully we can push further on towards greater things across the buys, and hopefully the buys don't shaft us too badly.
Yeah, so I guess our SCMates side is going a lot better than our two sides. But do just want to give a pump my tires up here a bit, because my tipping this year is going extremely well. So for those of you that do footy tips, so I've got 81 winners so far, which is actually placing me in the top 4,000 overall. Out of 919,000 tipsters on the ESPN Footy Tips website. So, even though my SuperCoach isn't necessarily, going that well, and it's never really been a priority, it's always been sort of the tipping side of stuff. Obviously I never thought I'd be in the top 4,000 overall in the world on the website. I think obviously I'm doing something right. I don't know if I flagged this last week, but I did actually tip Carlton to beat Geelong. It was a feeling I had all week. And I actually spoke with a Carlton supporter and said, I just want you to tell me why I shouldn't tip Carlton. They couldn't, so I tipped them and it paid off. So, that's sort of my gloat for the week. But as per normal, what we're going to do now is we're going to do our team review. So on the screen, Thomas will have his own side and the SCMates side down the bottom, and then on the other screen that you guys can't see, I'm going to have my own team up, where I'll offer my own thoughts and opinions just as Thomas goes through each of the positions. So I'm now going to hand over to Thomas, who's going to do the teams.
Well, as I said in the intro, Taylor two halves, unfortunately, for my own side. 1777 for my side. I guess was a little bit disappointing to kind of fail to hit the 1800 mark. I mean, it still put me up in the rankings, which I guess is a positive. I think from what I saw as well from other teams online and kind of the general gist of it this week was that it seemed like, people tended to hit the 1900 mark, and that was a really strong score, or people just completely bottled it. And I think a lot of premiums failed and a lot of captaincies didn't quite hit the mark. And if you didn't have Heaney, it kind of really hurt as well. Both teams got the green arrow. I think hopefully if my team can kind of salvage within the top 5K, that's a big positive considering I was in the 50K range at the start of the season. But I think all eyes on the SCMates community squad and how we go across the buys, because I think we're in a healthy position with 15 trades and posting the trades options this week, not looking to burn the last boost just yet, and have pretty healthy names across the board. So that's a real big positive. But moving on to the back line to start things off this episode. The back line was actually really good. I guess Cal Wilkie was been a really positive pickup. We all knew he got tagged by Voss last week and even then scored an 86. I mean, we got murdered in the first half, and he was still scoring pretty well, and he was kind of on Gunston as a one-on-one, and I think he just gets enough ball down there regardless now with Naz out of the picture off half back. I mean, it's yet to be seen how him coming back will impact things, whether they persist playing him through the mids or as a St Kilda supporter, I'd probably be a stronger advocate for Naz playing off half back just because of the ball use he generates. And look, I don't think that'll impact Wilkie that much. I think he's going to get enough ball down there anyway with kickouts and the chip kind of style with him and Silvani. I think at the end of the day, I think Silvani's actually helped Wilkie a lot, not only from a player perspective, but also from a SuperCoach scoring perspective. I think having him down there has actually really helped him. But yeah, he's a really good pickup. He's got that round 16 bye with Geelong, which makes it really hard with Holmes and Smith in a lot of sides, but he's a really strong pickup at that price. Looking around the board, yeah, Clark got his first ton in years, which was nice to see. He finally done it, and I think that's what you got to be careful of about trading these, I guess fake premiums or whatever you want to call them, that haven't quite lived up to the expectation. You got to be careful of trading them because they can easily pull out 100 at any given week, and I think that's the risk that you run when you start sideways in too much, and that's something we'll touch on as we go through the buys. Jack Harrell's actually been really impressive in my side. I don't think many players actually do have him still or didn't start him. He is probably the most preferred option in that half back line ahead of Stocker and Hunter Clark, who's injured at the moment. Look, there's rumours of Lance Collard coming in off half back this week against Sydney to replace Sam Flanders. I don't think that'll affect Carroll too much. He's just been that really consistent halfback liner for us, which has been really good. I mean, Bodie Ryan was really disappointing when the news dropped in the episode last week that he was dropped from the side. He's pretty much a dead rookie. Lockie Whitfield, look, an average score coming back, but I don't know how much you can expect off that. And yeah, Archie Roberts is probably the other one that it's been really disappointing for my side and the SCMates side is that I brought him in both sides in the same week, and he hasn't really turned up since. And look, I guess, close to 100 is okay, but I guess with the amount of possessions he was getting, you really wanted to hit those 130s and 140s a bit more often, what he's capable of. I think the downside of him playing so well in the first 7-8 rounds is that he's definitely going to cop more attention. He got a tag, albeit probably a weaker one on the weekend. But, yeah, look to bounce back hopefully against Carlton, that's for sure. But how did your defensive line go, and is anyone you're looking at potential trading options, Nathan?
Yeah, well, mine actually went all right, I guess. So I had Jack Sinclair, so I was happy with him. Yeah, I think St Kilda were a bit of a surprise at the minute with actually how well they're doing. So over the last 6 weeks, St Kilda actually have the third best attacking profile in the league over the last 6 weeks. Now, that would probably surprise a few people, given the fact that they're missing the sire, and the fact that, Ross Lyon is more of a defensively geared coach. So to be third overall with the football, I think is a great result for St Kilda. And yeah, Sinclair's obviously a huge part of that. I think Nasiah coming back in will only enhance that with the football profile. I think he definitely needs to play off halfback. Now, I guess what that does to Sinclair and the other St Kilda defenders scoring is yet to be seen, but I think it can only enhance them as a team by having him there. Max Holmes, so brought him in. I was a bit disappointed with his score, only scoring the 91. But I think you'll sort of wear that given that, they lost. They got really badly beaten at clearance and contests. So, and their runs largely got shut down. So, last week we spoke about how well they were going. Whether or not this is just a blip for them, or more of a trend, I would probably be inclined to say it's just a blip. But yeah, we'll see about that. I did bring Carl Wilkie in last week, so I think I flagged off. I think I flagged on camera that I was going to bring in Wilkie for Dan Houston, which I did end up making that move. So I was happy with the extra 24 points that I got from Wilkie. And they've basically just about swap prices. So I think Houston was about $4.50 last week, and Wilkie was about that $4.30 mark. So they're basically swap prices. Tom McCarthy, so he's starting to come good. I think that's now 5 of his last 6 weeks that he scored over 100 points. So his break even's 51. I think he's finally starting to get used to this midfield role at West Coast. They haven't, West Coast. They haven't really improved as much as what I was hoping over the last over the last 6-week block. But they obviously are improving. It's more what they're doing without the football, so defensively. So yeah, it's going to be seeing what happens there with him, but I hope that he can keep on going. Josh Lindsay, I think if I do a trade this week, I think it will be him out. I think he fell 12k. His break even's 116. So I was hoping I could get him through to West Coast by, but I don't think it will. I don't think I'll be able to. And then Jacob Farrow, who is still just going along nicely. 59. I think his time is probably just about up, but I think the thing with Farrow is that he does have that DPP eligibility, so perhaps there is still some hope for him there. And then I've also got Bodie Ryan. So unfortunately, I think he is probably a dead rookie. So perhaps that's going to incline for me to keep one of Sarong or Farrow, just for a bit of DPP flexibility later on in the year. But yeah, my defense, as I said, it was missing a few. So obviously Luke Parker didn't play because North had the bye. But yeah, overall, I think the defense, as I said, the premiums went quite well other than Holmes. And I think Farrow and Lindsay were probably respectable.
Yeah, it's fair enough. I guess there's probably not too many players off the bye that you'd be looking at to bring in. Maybe if you're desperate for a defender, Miller is an option from Adelaide, who's done really, really well. But yeah, I'd say there's probably definitely options in the midfield that you want to target first ahead of that. But moving on to the midfield, I guess majority of the midfielders did really well. I guess all eyes were on Heaney, who dominated that Richmond side, who looked absolutely hapless. I think that's been a really positive move in our side for the SCMates side when we brought him quite early on in the piece. Bailey Smith, watching him live, I went to that Carlton game with another mate of mine, and I think watching him live and just highlights his run and gun kind of mentality, where it doesn't matter if he gets tagged. If he did get tagged in that game, I mean, hypothetically, if he did, I think he just runs opponents to the ground, which makes him a really tough tag target, I guess. And I guess that's how he gets a lot of his disposals, that just hard running through the midfield, those 1-2s throughout the corridor, which really helps his score. And I guess, probably showing how well he is playing at the moment. Bontempelli, look, he's probably an automatic VCNC lock for most weeks now, it seems like, from all reports that he had his strapping off his knee. So, knee looks pretty healthy, and probably look him to be a real focal point for the Dogs moving into the latter half of the season if they want to play any part of September. Dacos as per normal. I guess the two really impressive players in the SCM8 sides being Jagger Smith and Murdoch, who have now, in the previous set of DPPs, have got that forward eligibility. And you could, by all means, I think if you're struggling to fill out your side, Jagger Smith and Murdoch could easily become F5, F6, no worries with where they're playing at the moment. Murdoch, I guess, there's a slight asterisk next to his name with regards to potential tag things that he might get throughout the year. He was the one that tagged Roberts, but actually played it very well, and it was a very loose tag, I think, from what I saw watching that game. And yeah, I think he's going to get those good scores when he has a bit more freedom to play. And Jagger Smith will be in that mid rotation, I think, for the remainder of the year, and that's going to be correlated to his scoring. He probably could have got 100 to 110 in that game. Just quietly there as well. He used the ball really, really poorly and had a few unnecessary turnovers and unlucky turnovers, and I think that's what cost him that. And still got 81, so can't complain. Merritt in the SCMates side is probably the most disappointing, and that's probably reflective of how bad Essendon are going at the moment and how not disinterested, but probably there are issues there with the senior group at the moment at Essendon, and that's reflective of Merritt and I guess how all of Essendon are going. They're in a world of pain at the moment, but I guess his scoring still is okay. Lachie Neale got tagged in that Brisbane game. I feel sorry for McCluggey Jonas, I guess, because he's even going even worse, and he's not the one getting tagged. And Neale got a hard tag in that game against who was it? Fremantle, yeah. Matt Johnson went to him and pretty much was tagging him. And look, Neale's going to cop those attentions from here and there. So, but yeah, like that was to be expected once I found out he was being tagged. But yeah, I guess the main question we have this week, and I've had a few messages already on Instagram, on X as well, about what to do with the midfield premiums coming in. I guess I want to hear your opinion, Nathan, about how the midfield premiums are shaping up, because at the moment, if you look at who's coming off the bye, you've got LDU or Luke Davis-Uniacke, Jordan Dawson, who's playing tomorrow night, and then the midfield duo of Rowell and Anderson coming off their bye. I'm not taking any forwards into consideration at the moment, but out of those four, how would you rank them from first to fourth with regards to who you should bring in this week?
Well, I'm actually going to throw up two different names just to completely go elsewhere. So based on what I've seen for the past 12 weeks, you simply have to have Heaney and Bailey Smith in your final midfield. Now, it's going to be frustrating to get them in, but you just have to have them in there. Isaac Heaney currently is the highest rated player in the game. And Bailey Smith obviously is the highest averaging midfielder in SuperCoach. So you're just going to have to find a way to get those two in, unfortunately. In terms of the teams coming off the bye, so I think the number one target I think you should be getting. So this is not worrying about price. This is just purely, I think, on output. So I think Jordan Dawson should be the number one target this year. Or this week. He's 576,000. His break even's 114. But he is very highly rated. This year's the sixth highest rated player in the game across the first 12 weeks. So obviously, I know the AFL player ratings and SuperCoach aren't the same thing, but they are sort of interrelated with one another. So I don't think you can go wrong with Dawson. As for Rowell and Anderson, I'm still not sure on the Suns. They started off like a house on fire, but the last 6 weeks there are some trends that are sort of emerging in their game a little bit, which perhaps has me a bit concerned. Now they do get Brisbane this week, so it's going to be interesting to see how they go off the bye, because earlier on in the year I think there were only 2 sides that lost coming off the bye, so that's going to be interesting to see with those ones. And then LDU, so I guess the thing with LDU is even though North Melbourne are going well, there are still problems defensively with North Melbourne, so yes, all credit to them. They've started the year amazingly well, but they have had a reasonably soft draw. And it basically took them, the last kick of the game to overrun Gold Coast, who had been up in Darwin for 2 weeks. So, I'm still not exactly convinced on how North Melbourne, how well they're actually going, despite them getting the wins. But obviously you can't, you can't knock them for what they've done. So in terms of the trade, so I think Dawson should be number one. I prefer the outside, the damaging midfielder. So I think Anderson would be number two. And then I think Rail and LDU are basically just about the same type of player. So whoever's the cheapest one out of the two. So Rail is 514. I would say LDU is probably higher than that. LDU is about 50k higher. So I'd probably say in order, I'd probably go Dawson, Anderson, Rail, and LDU. As in that order.
Yeah.
That's above all. I think you just have to get Smith and Heaney in if you haven't got them, because they're just going to kill you in the second half of the year not having them.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I think I know Heaney's got the bye next week and Smith's got their round 16 bye. So look, I probably wouldn't get Heaney this week in particular, just because I guess there's a little bit of, you wouldn't want to just get him for 1 week and then cop the bye. So definitely wait for him for after the bye. And Smith, I mean, he's probably one that you just need to get in at some point throughout the season. That's for sure. But I guess with regards to my own rankings, probably similar to Nathan, I'd rate Dawson quite highly. I think the only downside to Dawson this week is that he's got the tag probably coming to him with O'Shea Mullen most likely going to him. Look, probably that means that Dawson goes or swings up forward and B's could be quite damaging up forward as well. But you got Mark O'Connor there as well who could do a job on him, and I think they're going to target him quite heavily regardless of where he plays, unless he maybe goes down back a bit. But yeah, he's one that could cop a bit of attention this week, which might impact his scoring. Having said that, I can see Dawson being a player that you might want to have for the rest of the season with how Adelaide might have. I think they've got a few softer draws coming up, but he's just a player that is very capable of scoring a 130, 140 quite easily. After that, I'll probably have, opposite to what Nathan said, I think just based off what I've seen so far, Rao's price is pretty enticing at 514k. Look, there's a bit of a bit of risk maybe attached to it compared to the other two, that he hasn't really strung, 300 to 400s together as consistently as the others have, which is, I guess, a little bit concerning. But at that price and what he did last year, if I could just bring up his stats from last year, he did a similar thing after the bye where he just went absolutely berserk. So if I bring up his score chart from last year, 2025, this was after his bye. Where he had it? Yeah, so he did bye at round 14, and then after round 14, he went 106, 147, 97, 156, 161, 143, 134, 146, 117, 67, and then 167, and then turned up in both the elimination final and the semi-final, which I guess is a real plus for SuperCoach owners. And having said that, Rao did a similar thing last year where prior to his bye, he looked really, really shaky. Didn't string that many consecutive tons together. Having said that, the tons he did were 120 plus, but he had a few of those sub 60 scores in there. So I guess the positive with Rao is he's done it before, where he's strung a really good post-bye performance together. And at that price, I think there is less risk attached compared to some other options. Anderson, look, I had him in the SCMates community side to start with as a bit of pair. They ended up trading him out. So he had a really poor start to the season. Look, that might have been, I know he had his appendix removed or something like that, or had appendicitis, I don't know, some sort of injury involving that.
Yeah, it was appendicitis.
Yeah, which could have impacted him for a couple of weeks prior. But look, he has looked really, really impressive in the last 3 to 4 weeks. I don't know if it's been a role change or what it has been exactly. He seems to be playing that Sam Flanders type of role where he kind of gets a lot of his disposals in the defensive half and pushes back and is damaging through his run and carry rather than winning it from stoppage, which is probably where the points are coming from. And look, I wouldn't blame you at all if you went down that route as well. LDU's another one that's probably been overlooked a little bit by a lot of players just because of North's stature and how he's probably burnt a lot of super coaches in the past. But he's one that I've got in my trade plans in my personal side as well. And I believe will probably be coming into the SCMates community side this week as well. I think they've got a very good draw coming up. A few soft targets, including a West Coast game as well. And he's just a player that I think has really benefited from, North's rise up the ladder and has probably benefited from a lot of that midfield group improving around him. And he's not having to be or not being forced to be the sole midfielder in there trying to do everything. And I think that's really helped him and probably helped his disposal efficiency as well. So, look, for me, I'll probably have Dawson higher in general this week. Probably not, just because he probably gets an attention from the Geelong mids. But yeah, I'd say Rao number 2, and then LDU 3, Anderson 4. But moving on to the ruck line, I guess this one's probably the least talked about from our week-to-week reviews, just because we're not going to change any of these 4 rucks across these 2 sides unless there's injury. Grundy was frustratingly managed, and that was found out obviously on the Thursday night. That was probably disappointing because he could have had a day out against the Tigers. And there is talk of potentially him and Laddam's team duo rucking, which is a little bit of a concern. But yeah, Grundy's Grundy. I think maybe have a wait on him until his bye is over. That's, I guess, a positive if you want to bring him in that flex position. But yeah, Gawn's, I guess he's probably one that's hasn't been that impressive with regards to the ceiling scores per se. I think everyone against GWS were hoping that he was going to get his ceiling score against Briggs without no Heath. And then he just went to get a solid 118. I mean, the D's got absolutely smashed. So I guess there's that to worry about. But yeah, as a Gawn owner, you'd want to get higher scores. And Jackson was his first disappointing game for the season. Hopefully that doesn't become a normality where he gets some of those 90s, but I guess he's been super impressive for the rucks. But I guess swiftly moving forward to the forward line, because this is where it gets fairly dicey, and it'd be interesting to see what your thoughts are on Flanders this week, because he's the big talk of the town with his Achilles injury, which is a year's wait on the sideline, unfortunately. What are your thoughts on trading him out? I guess you obviously have the opportunity, and probably even though people have traded out Jagger Smith, you've got the option of swinging Milan Murdoch in the forward line, which then opens up your midfield. Midfielders aside, because we've already spoken about them, what are your thoughts on I guess, the forward options this week? 2 that spring to mind off the bye. Jason, not 2, just 1. Jason on Francis. But then you've got like Riley Sanders in there who's done really well. Josh Tracy as a key forward who's done superbly well this season. But what are your thoughts on options for Sanders if you're looking specifically for a forward?
Well, I was actually going to suggest swinging him up into midfield if you could, to grab one of those Heaney or Smith types. Look, I think we had the same discussion last week with, I've forgotten who it was last week. Now we had the discussion with another long-term forward who got injured. So I'll basically just rinse and repeat what I said. I think Christian Petrarca, I think you've got to have him in your side. I think if you haven't got Flanders, so if you've got Flanders and you haven't got Petrarca, I think that's just the easiest trade in the world. I know Petrarca's break even's 120, but he's shown this year that he can score that very willy-nilly. So I wouldn't be too bothered with that. The other one, a bit left of centre here, but I spoke about this guy last week, but Jordan De Goey is absolutely on fire at the minute. He's only 7K cheaper than what Flanders is. So I don't know if people are game enough to go down that De Goey path, but his 4-week average is about 115 odd. His 3-game average is 108. Sorry. So he's in white hot form. But yeah, otherwise, then I think you're probably looking at your normal suspects. Your Shea Boltons, your Keziah Pickett's. I personally, at this stage, because I've already got Christian Petrarca, I personally have gone with Jason Horne-Francis as a forward. But if I can somehow work a way to get him up into the midfield, Flanders, which I think might involve Murdoch, then I will probably move him out for a midfielder. And go from there, because I feel like I'm probably one short in the midfield with Sarong still being injured. So, I think that's probably what I would do. I would probably heed my own advice and probably go for Isaac Heaney, just because of the price differential between him and Bailey Smith. I know Sydney have their bye next week, so ideally I'd like to wait till next week. But yeah, I think for me, I think I'm going to try and move Flanders on for a midfielder, just because I think they're more reliable than the forwards. But yeah, obviously, refer back to what I said last week. If you haven't got Sheasel or Petrarca, you've got to have those two. So that's your priority. First priority for Flanders. Just have those two in your side, in your forward line. And then if you've already got both of them and, you're short in the forward line still, then, you can look at Bolton or Pickett or, Jason Horne-Francis off the bye, Rochelle off the bye. But yeah, I think in an ideal world, you'd probably want to move him up into the midfield and bring in another midfielder. Just because of the scoring.
Yeah, no, that's probably priority number one is to bring a midfielder in with those four options that we mentioned earlier. But yeah, forward line's pretty grim. I think you look at Petrarca and Sheasel. Look, if you don't have either of them for whatever reason, particularly probably Petrarca with his initial injury early in the season, he's probably prime suspect number one to bring in off his bye. But yeah, look, other than that, like not many other premiums have done really well. They've been up and down, like Rochelle Rankin. Rankin's been obviously really good in the last month before he injured his calf. And I guess that's what I alluded to early in the season, that potentially that might have happened. Not particularly the calf, but just a soft tissue injury with how he is historically and him playing prime midfield or pure midfield for a long amount of time. That's probably the risk that you run with the soft tissue injuries with him. I guess looking at the options, yeah, Nathan raised a point with De Gea. He's probably in the form of his career at the moment, really dominating games. And look, he's one that you could go left field if you look at like a pod. But for me, out of those options, probably Jason Horne-Francis is a good pick. At that price, is pretty good at 440k as well. And he's one of those players in that Butters realm where if Port do well, he fires very well. And I guess in the forward line, you can kind of cover his poorer scores a little bit or mask his poorer scores a little bit with how volatile the forward line has been going. Like I've held Murphy Reid in that SCMates community side for a while now. I've just realised as well I've copied and pasted the same picture across my side as well. But my side has Cozzy Pickett instead of Murphy Reid pretty much is the main difference, and Rochelle. But yeah, look, I think you can kind of, don't worry or stress as much in that forward line because the scores are so volatile, which I guess makes Horne-Francis a bit of an appealing pick, and they play West Coast, I believe, which is a pretty good matchup for him, I think.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing, alluding to what Nathan was saying about bringing those must-haves like your Heaney's and whatnot, look at next week's bye. Just be careful of the four teams on their bye: Collingwood, Carlton, Hawthorn, and the Dockers. So I probably wouldn't get any of those players in this week because you only get that one sugar hit of them before you get the bye. And then you've got Lions, Essendon, Sydney, West Coast, and then obviously round 16, which will come to when it comes to it. But yeah, probably I wouldn't get in any of those immediate fortnight player buys just because you're not going to get many games out of them before they have their bye. And then, round 16 is already tough enough as it is with so many players on that bye that are relevant to SuperCoach. That makes it hard. So, yeah, I guess the number one priority is if you are new to SuperCoach, bring in those players that have had their bye already. So, obviously, the players like your West Coast, your Gold Coast, Port, Adelaide, are the number one priority, because now you get them for the rest of the season. And yes, like, don't, on the flip side, don't go crazy and start bringing in absolute ridiculous picks just because they are playing in the bye free teams. But yeah, there's obviously a few options there. But before wrapping up, Nathan, what are your thoughts on the vice captaincy and captaincy options this round?
Yeah, look, I think this round's a bit tricky at first glance with vice captain and captaincy options. So tomorrow night, Adelaide v Geelong. I think, again, Bailey Smith, Max Holmes. If you've got one of them, I'd probably put it on them. Although, yeah, as I said, they are playing Adelaide off the bye. Hawthorn v the Bulldogs. I think it depends on if Sam Mitchell decides to tag. I think Bont and Ed Richards are ideal candidates. If they don't tag. North Melbourne and Fremantle. I wouldn't be putting it on Jackson. I think him and Tristan Cherry will negate each other out. Gold Coast v Brisbane. So, even though I personally, I don't think Brisbane right now are in premiership contention, despite what some people have said, just with their profile, especially over the last 6 weeks. We know that Damien Hardwick doesn't like tagging, so perhaps this is a week for Neil or McCluggage to get off the chain and make a bit of a statement. I thought it would come last week, and it didn't. So, I think this is why I'm a bit concerned about Brisbane. West Coast v Port Adelaide. So let's not forget that West Coast actually beat Port Adelaide earlier on in the season. But yeah, I can see Murdoch going straight to Butters or Horn-Francis. I think it's just going to happen. So I think the other one there might get off the chain. I think the one I like the most is that Sydney St Kilda game. I don't know who. However, Essendon v Carlton. I think one of those Carlton midfielders could go ballistic, given the fact that Essendon basically are playing a VFL side at the minute. And then I think for me, the captaincy will go King's birthday on Monday, being on Max Gawn. Because Collingwood this year are the worst side for centre clearance differential. And obviously, Darcy Cameron hasn't done much there this year. So, well, actually, I don't think they're the worst, but they're definitely in the bottom half of the ladder for centre clearance differential. So I think Max Gawn can, really go quite well against Darcy Cameron. We've been alluding to this all year about Darcy Cameron's inefficiency in centre ball ups. So I think for me, I will probably go Bont into Max Gawn for my vice captain and captaincy. Are you thinking the same lines?
Yeah, look, I probably just bringing up the fixtures now. Just looking, I wouldn't captain anyone from VC anyone from the Crows and the Cats. Maybe Bailey Smith if you have him. He's probably a safe shout, but he has this habit of also producing like 120, 119, 118, and then you're not sure if you want to pick him. So yeah, your VC, you really want to pick for ceiling. Dogs, Hawks, look, Bontempelli could be an option, I guess. In the past, from what I've seen this season as well, the Hawthorn are very, very good at restricting opposition midfielders, and whether they do a Nash to Bontempelli or something to try and restrict his influence, that could well be it. But they seem to really do well in stoppage anyway. So yeah, they restrict the Dogs' ball movement. That's going to be quite obvious, I think, come Friday night. I wouldn't be against VCing if you really want to be brave, a McCluggage or a Neil. Yeah, the Suns have been pretty woeful, I think, in the midfield, allowing opposition mids to do what they want with regards to SuperCoach scoring. And yeah, I think Hardwick's always been of that ilk that, you just back your players in to win the ball themselves. So I could see the Brisbane mids getting a bit off the chain there. And then moving on, I would suggest that Murdoch's probably going to go to Butters if he is to tag. I think Horne-Francis is just too big for Murdoch in that sense. You look at how they decided to tag Archie Roberts. Look, it could be that Murdoch, because he's more forward-oriented, tags like a Kane Farrell or something to try and kind of suffocate the port ball movement out of the back half, which is definitely an option. But yeah, if you're looking at best players, you look at Butters and Horne-Francis straight away. But yeah, I wouldn't think, I'd be surprised if Murdoch tries to tag Horne-Francis just because of his size. Sydney St Kilda, look, I wouldn't go Grundy because of the double duo ruck that St Kilda present themselves with. Look, it could well be because of duo ruck of TDK and Marshall that they do bring in Laddams as well to try and help Grundy a little bit. But yeah, Heaney's probably the one. Look, I probably wouldn't straight captain him. I think you got the luxury of going a Dacos or a Gawn in the King's birthday class, sorry, which is really helpful. But I probably would VC him because he has the potential of going bananas. But I would suggest with how poor St Kilda were last week, you'd be looking to bounce back quite strongly and do a number on Heaney as well. And probably the other option is, Essendon Carlton. I would say if you somehow have Cripps, I'd definitely VC or see him. I could see him going absolutely bananas in that game. He's actually probably been the best beneficiary of that coach change. He's looked like a new player since that. And Sammy Walsh as well, probably not as much with him because of not much of a ceiling going on there, but he's probably a safe option as well if you want to go down that route. But yeah, there's definitely a few good options there. I guess this week in particular is probably the one to really make sure you get a good score in because there's not that many. You've only got Giants and the Tigers as buy options, and no one's really got a premium Tigers players. So yeah, other than that, I think you should see some really healthy scores this week. So hopefully you survive the remaining buys and the second of the lot, and we'll catch you for the next one.